So my topic is gun policy, focusing on the dangers stemming from a lack of effective gun policy. So my thesis statement is, although many people view easy access to firearms as a right and as a means of easily access safety, firearms should be restricted because a lack of effective gun policies leads to more deaths in America. Secondly, firearms are often misused. And thirdly, their mere presence does not increase the chances of safety or protection. So for the background section, I just defined things like permitless carry, firearm law, and assault weapons. And then I basically just talk about how the removal of safeguards by using policies such as permitless carry allows firearms to fall into the hands of the wrong people. And then when military-style guns are being accessible to these same wrong people, the potential danger to the public safety is unfathomable. So this problem affects the NRA, politicians, gun shops and manufacturers, American citizens, students, and teachers. Overall, I just mentioned a few statistics that basically explains some background on this topic. The lack of effective gun policies in America has led to an increase in deaths throughout the country. So that is my first lines of argument reason. So in this section, I basically argue that when you compare states with weak gun laws to states with strong gun laws, then you can see higher homicide rates in the states with weak gun laws when you compare them overall. And then not only that, but some of the states in America that have the highest mortality rates in the country have the weakest gun laws in the country. So the second lines of argument reason that I went into was that firearms are often misused. So firearms of all kinds of models. So in this section, I just argue that the implementation of things like permitless carry allows and even encourages people like violent criminals who have been charged with harassment, sexual harassment, domestic violence situations. It allows them to legally go out and buy a firearm. And then secondly, adolescents. So like people in some states as young as 18 can go legally purchase and carry firearms in public streets. And not only that, but in some states, minors can be gifted firearms. And so it just really affects our adolescents and violent criminals. That is two ways that firearms are often misused, because they're not supposed to be used like people like that. And then another way that firearms are often misused is that suicides. So yeah, I just explained some statistics towards that. And then the third lines of argument reason was that the mere presence of firearms does not increase your levels of safety or protection. So yeah. So even if they were purchased by someone who went through all of the safety steps, like a clear background check, getting a gun license and all that. I just cite a few examples from Peter Cummings that shows that people who were in the vicinity of handguns, when compared to people who are not in the vicinity of handguns, like whether it be family members, friends, themselves who bought a handgun, they were more likely to die a violent death. So, and this was true with both homicide and suicide. So just being around the mere presence of firearms increases your chances of dying a violent death. So for the refutation section, there's an author that expresses his opinions on the topic of widely banned guns and how they're actually useful in everyday situations. So like hunting ethically, and hunting safely. And then secondly, by farmers who need to protect their crops and animals from pests. So they use it as pest control from like coyotes, etc. So in this section, I just refute it by saying we've got to strongly weigh our variables, and we've got to ask ourselves whether or not putting animals' well-being and farmers' well-being over the lives of countless American citizens who are dying every day So yeah, basically I just stress how important it is to weigh your variables in this situation, and I give a lot more statistics on how humans are dying at a really fast rate, and we've got to ask ourselves if this is worth it. And then secondly, there's an opposing argument that firearms are not to blame for mass shootings or deaths related to firearms, but people are. So Steph Cater just argues that things like mental health, built up resentment and hatred can cause a person to kill someone with firearms. In that not being able to have access to firearms will not stop these people from killing. It'll just force them to find another weapon. So she just proposes that we instead focus on mental health issues and just take the attention off of gun restrictions, because she says that it's not worth it. So for this, I say that so taking firearms and putting restrictions on them will do nothing but stop enabling murderers. So this, I just say, like, whether you're struggling with mental health or feelings, or you're not struggling with anything and you just want to kill somebody, this will stop enabling them. And even if they do go find another weapon, I cite sources that show that when there was a semi-automatic weapon involved, a lot more people died. So it'll at least save a few lives if it doesn't save any at all. And then the third refutation was that gun regulations are ineffective and their tactics will not decrease guns from falling into the wrong hands. So this refutation just talked about how it would be better for a citizen with a gun to have a gun to protect themselves and others from the shooter, from the bad shooter. So basically just saying that you should fight fire with more fire. So that's basically what I say in my rebuttal. I just say, I quote an author that shows that there, from 1996 to 2015, there were 0 events in which an armed civilian stopped an active shooting. So my refutation of this was that it's just not valid. It's not valid because it's not very common. So for the conclusion, I just wanted to say that many people look down on gun control and see it as a threat to their safety and basic rights. But firearms should be restricted because a lack of effective gun policies only contributes to more deaths in America. Firearms are often misused in multiple ways and circumstances, and the presence of a firearm does not mean you have a higher chance of staying safe or protecting your loved ones. So my research is significant because if nothing is done to unify against this issue, people from both sides will continue dying at an unprecedented rate. So it's basically, my research is just to encourage you to take a side that saves lives. So my call to action is the reader must consider the statistics, data, and facts I have provided throughout this paper, and it's important not to only dwell on this information, but to act behind it. So vote into office people both locally and federally for individuals who hold similar core values and who just prioritize human life. So it's also important to listen and support and uplift survivors of gun violence and to fund research in other various organizations that fight gun violence. So yeah, that's all of my sections.